RCB conceded 255 against Sunrisers Hyderabad and lost the game. And while they still qualified for the playoffs in the top two, there were a few questions being asked about their bowling, which is fair. When you concede those many runs, people generally tend not to applaud your length and line consistency. They ask questions, usually loudly, sometimes in all caps on social media. In today's episode of the 23rd Yard Club Cricket Podcast, we dig deeper into what transpired during the RCB bowling innings. Before we get down to looking at whether RCB bowled badly, we need to see if RCB actually used the surface properly, because those are not always the same thing. RCB's frontline seamers bowled 12 overs combined, that's 72 legal deliveries, at the wides, and you get about 80 balls in total, out of which only 20 were slower balls, cutters, or knuckleballs. That number feels surprisingly low once you look at how Hyderabad approached the same surface while defending. SRH absolutely drenched the RCB chase in slower deliveries. They practically treated slower balls like a cheat code they had no intention of stopping using. Virat Kohli fell to a slower ball. Venki Iyer, he also fell to one. Saqib Hussain, a bowler who normally operates comfortably above 135 km per hour, suddenly looked like a man who had discovered the joys of moderation. Across his 4 overs, he averaged roughly 123, 124 km per hour and kept feeding RCB cutters and slower balls. Even by his standards of a slower ball bowling specialist, that was quite a drop in speeds, deliberately and safe with the knowledge that the pitch would take care of the rest. And it worked. His third over, the 13th of the chase, was especially telling. If memory serves me right, 5 or 6, all the deliveries were slower balls. RCB managed just 6 runs from it. His final over, even with the game effectively gone and a 6+4 coming off that over, he still finished with 31 from 4 overs. That is elite damage control in a 250-run chase, which sounds absurd to say out loud, but modern T20 cricket has fully broken our sense of proportion anyway. Now, this brings us back to RCB's approach. In the power play, they bowled only 7 slower balls. Now, that part is understandable to an extent. With only 2 fielders outside the circle, slower balls become riskier because mistimed shots can still fly safely into open spaces. Captains generally want the hard lengths and sieve movement or swing movement early on. Fair enough. But what was more surprising was how few slower balls were bowled after the power play. RCB captain Rajat Patidar said after the game that SRH executed their slower balls better. And that line is worth examining carefully as well, because there's a subtle distinction here. It's one thing to say that SRH executed them better. It's another thing to admit that RCB perhaps did not even attempt enough of them in the first place. After those first 6 overs after the power play, Josh Hazlewood came back to bowl in the 13th over. That was his first over after the power play. And he tried 2 slower ball bouncers. Both sailed over the batter's heads for wides. After that, he more or less abandoned the experiment in that over. Bhuvi Kumar, he bowled the 15th, which was again his first after coming back from the power play. And he actually committed quite heavily to the slower ball plan. 5 of his 7 balls, including a wide, were slower balls. He went for 18 runs. Then something interesting happened. When Bhuvi returned for the 19th over, he looked completely done with the idea. All 6 deliveries were bowled at normal pace, around 132 to 135 range, and he bowled well too, conceding just 8 runs of it. Even Hazlewood's final over contained only 1 slower ball. Ironically, it nearly produced a wicket. Kishan mistimed it straight back, only for Hazlewood himself to put the catch down on his follow. A streaky 6 of the final ball ruined what had otherwise been shaping into a very strong over. Rasikh Dar, the third of their seamers, followed a similar pattern. In his third over, the 16th of the innings, he attempted 4 slower balls and he disappeared for 20 in that over. In his final over, the 20th of the innings, he bowled just 1 and he bowled well at that. So there's probably some truth in what Patidar was hinting at after the game. Yes, the pitch looked ideal for cutters and pace off bowling, but there's a difference between identifying the correct tactic and actually being able to execute it under pressure. RCB's bowlers, for large parts, struggle to land those deliveries effectively enough. And once a bowler loses trust in a slower ball, especially after being punished, there's a natural tendency to retreat back towards the hard lengths and conventional pace. There were also 3 other important mitigating factors here, which in their own way played a part. The first was Hyderabad's start. SRH had already built a substantial platform inside the power play, losing only 1 wicket. More notably, after the 6th over, RCB's frontline seamers virtually disappeared for a while. It wasn't until the 13th over that Hazlewood, Bhuvi or Rasikh Dar returned. Instead, you had Romario Shepherd bowling 3 overs. Krunal Pandya and Suyash Sharma also operated through the middle overs. And now there may be a larger management plan here. Maybe RCB wanted Shepherd to get some bowling rhythm before the playoffs. Maybe they were trying to preserve their main bowlers. Maybe they just like the matchup data. I mean, whatever is the reasoning. By the time the frontline seamers returned, Hyderabad were already 129 for 2 after 12 overs. And at that point, you were no longer dictating terms. At that point, SRH innings had already moved on from controlled aggression to good luck stopping this now. The second factor was their fielding. RCB dropped 4 catches in the innings. 4 important catches. And when one batter, Abhishek Sharma in this case, gets dropped 3 separate times, bowlers stop operating in ideal conditions anyway. It becomes very difficult to properly judge execution when every mistake is being generously refunded by the fielders. There's only so much tactical precision possible when your teammates are turning half chances into motivational support for the opposition. And then there was that third factor, reverse swing. There were multiple references during the commentary about the pitch being as bald as Murali Karthik's clean-shaven head, which admittedly is one of the more visually committed pitch descriptions we have had in recent times. But that baldness of the surface, that mattered. The abrasive surface scuffed the ball enough for it to start discoloring and reversing later in the innings. By the time Hazlewood and Bhuvaneshwar came back for their final spells, both were getting a degree of reverse swing. And once reverse swing becomes available, the slower ball equation changes significantly because reverse swing gives fast bowlers something that they trust more instinctively, especially if they can get it right. That's movement at pace. Suddenly, Yorkers and hard lengths start becoming attractive again. The slower ball stops feeling like the obvious primary weapon. So yes, there is definitely merit to the criticism that RCB perhaps did not maximize the surface as effectively as SRH did later on. But this wasn't simply a case of why didn't they bowl more slower balls. The answer is more uncomfortable than that, a little more nuanced, as I said. They tried, sometimes sparingly, sometimes unsuccessfully, sometimes briefly before abandoning it altogether. And Hyderabad, helped by a flying start, dropped chances and constantly shifting nature of the surface as well as it became slower, never really allowed RCB to settle into a consistent bowling strategy, which is what happens in T20 cricket now. Teams don't just lose because they chose the wrong plan. They lose because the game moves on too quickly for them to fully trust any one plan for long enough. So let me know what you think about RCB's bowling effort in the comment section below. Also, please do like the video if you like the content, that is. I'll be back with more such cricket videos, so please do subscribe to the channel as well. Till next time, bye-bye.